Explain like I'm 5. I saw that Uber is still not making money. How is that possible? They have a lot of people working for them, worldwide known. And also, if they don't make any money, how are they still alive? Uber, like a lot of tech companies, has investors who believe that it will become profitable at some point. So they keep Uber not only alive, but even give them the money they need to grow more. In return, the investors will get a share of the profits once they turn a profit. Not necessarily true. An investor makes money as long as they can sell their shares for higher than they bought them at, not when Uber makes money. Let's say you get an Uber that costs $30. Uber will pay the driver, credit card company, app stores, etc. about $20 on average. So Uber gets $10 of that $30. Then they'll spend $5 on advertisements and marketing. Then they'll pay their corporate employees, execs, customer service, app developers, product developers, and others about $7. So they're spending $32 for every $30 they generate. They can do this because they got money from investors, and not all of those $32 in costs are cash costs. Uber pays some of their employees with stock, which is a cost, but doesn't actually require cash from Uber. That makes sense. But when you're an investor, you want to make money, right? How are they making any? Uber is making plenty of money and recently did actually turn a profit. So the question is, how did it take 14 years to get to this point? And why did investors put up with it for so long? Investors are willing to play the long game. When a startup is starting up, the first order of business is not to turn a profit or make more money than you spend. It's to build up your business so it can make a profit into the future. Uber has been dumping cash into subsidizing rides in new markets so they can secure a dominant market position. They want to be the default ride-share company in your city before Lyft gets there. They're also pouring cash into business expansions like Uber Eats and R&D projects like self-driving cars. Stuff that's costing a lot to get set up, but will make a lot of money in the future once it's established. During this whole time, they're making a lot of money, they're just spending more. Once they establish a secure, stable business that's resistant to competition, they can take their foot off the spending gas and start turning a profit, which it looks like they have. Unless I'm horribly mistaken, the premise of this question is wrong, as Uber has reported positive earnings, i.e. profit, in the past 2 quarters, which is why they are now included in the S&P 500 index. This information is really interesting and gives a fascinating insight into how Uber is still able to operate and grow despite not making a profit for a long time. I never realized that investors are willing to play the long game and invest in companies like Uber, even if they aren't immediately profitable. It's amazing to think about how much money is being spent on things like subsidizing rides, expanding into new markets, and investing in new technology like self-driving cars. And to top it off, Uber has recently turned a profit, which is a huge milestone for the company. I'm curious to know more about how Uber's business model has evolved over time and what strategies they have used to finally start turning a profit. What do you think this means for the future of the company and its investors? And how does this way of operating compare to other similar tech companies? Let me know in the comments down below, and let's move right into our next Reddit post. Explain like I'm 5. Why do most devices requiring AA or AAA batteries need at least 2? Why not create a standard battery that is the equivalent of 2, or have common circuitry that only relies on one battery of a similar low profile? The batteries only produce 1.5 volts, so putting 2 in series makes it 3 volts. There isn't anything stopping the creation of a 3 volts battery, and you can often find specialty ones. But with the same chemistry and size, it won't last as long. Oh no, you died mid-comment trying to connect 2 batteries. Most devices need something like 1833 volts to power microcontrollers and LEDs. One AAA battery delivers 1.5 volts inherent from their chemistry. There are devices that work fine off 1.5 volts, either by having a small internal voltage doubler circuit or just by having ultra-low voltage components. There is a 3-volt AA-like format using lithium like coin cells do. It's called CR14505 and it's around $5 a pop. It has similar energy capacity to the much cheaper 1.5 volts batteries. 18650s are also 3 volts in a near AA size. They're rechargeable unlike the coin cells and are closer to $10 per each. They also typically run in the 2300 to 3100 mAh range, which puts them over twice the energy of AA alkaline LR06 batteries. Because then you will have just added an additional type of battery, making things more complicated. Additionally, you will lose some of the efficiency of scale that allows AA and AAA batteries to be so cheap. By splitting their market into at least 2, if not more, if you have to account for the different space configurations and alignments that 2 batteries can take up. Creating new standards is hard and probably not worth it. Some devices need 1 battery, some need 2 or 3 or 4. So having separate special formats is unlikely to make sense. As a side note, most all 9-volt batteries are just 6 AAA batteries in a trench coat. This is really interesting. I never really thought about why most devices requiring AA or AAA batteries need at least 2. It's wild to think about all the different factors that go into something as seemingly simple as a battery. And I had no idea that there are specialty 3V batteries available. But it makes sense that they wouldn't last as long if they're the same size and chemistry as the standard one. 5-volt batteries. But then you have rechargeable options like the 18650s, which are 3 volts and rechargeable, but they're more expensive and have a higher energy capacity. It's like a whole world of batteries that I never really knew existed. So why do you think it's so hard to create new battery standards? And do you have any personal experience with specialty batteries like the CR1455? Let me know in the comments down below, and let's move right into our next Reddit post. Like I'm 5. Why are we humans not subject to regular deworming? Humans living in developed societies rarely contract parasitic worms. Humans are also capable of recognizing the symptoms of a parasitic worm infection and taking direct action to combat it. For that reason, deworming pills are typically only taken on an as-needed basis. There are some programs in the developing world that widely distribute deworming pills. Also, anthelminthic resistance is a major public health concern, even more so in many ways than antimicrobial resistance, especially in livestock. Recommendations for reducing parasites in animals largely revolve around treating affected animals, monitoring fecal egg counts, doing fecal egg count results during treatment, and improving sanitation efforts, or using other strategies to mitigate the spread of parasites, such as reducing vectors and practicing mixed species grazing, which also has some other issues but can help with parasites. This is balanced in some species and in parts of the developing world in humans, where the risk of parasites causes higher burdens and resistance has not been observed, like heartworm in dogs and cats. That disease has not shown much resistance, but is often fatal if untreated or allowed to develop. Even in undeveloped countries, programs to eliminate parasites rely a great deal on strategies to eliminate vectors and improve wastewater sanitation, rather than just treating everything with anthelminthics. For example, we've almost eliminated guinea worm, as of 2023, relying primarily on that strategy. One of the biggest projects responsible for reducing parasite burdens in the American South was the Tennessee Valley Authority, which improved access to running water and lavatories and had public health campaigns encouraging people to wear shoes around lavatories to prevent hookworm infection, wash their hands with soap after using the toilet to reduce fecal-oral transmission, etc. LOL. I'm old, grew up on a farm in a very rural area. Every spring my mother would bust out the deworming medication for dogs, cats, and kids. Cue my husband's boyfriend at the time, surprised the first spring we were together when I said it was time for deworming. He laughed so hard. But were you actually liable to be picking up worms on an annual basis? Rural is one thing, but generally worms as a problem in humans is from contaminated water supply. I can't imagine that was a recurring issue even in the rural areas. Because humans in a large part of the world do not regularly get worms. You can get intestinal worms from consuming eggs or live worms. They can be in undercooked meat, contaminated water, soil, feces, etc. Humans in general do not just drink and eat stuff we find in nature that could be contaminated. We clean food and cook lots of it. We do our business in a dedicated location, so we are not exposed to feces. We also wash ourselves in a way that other animals do not. It is children who are at risk because they put stuff in their mouths like dirt that adults don't. The result is in large part developed world intestinal worms are quite rare. It does not mean it is not something that is recommended for humans at all. WHO does recommend it for children where soil-transmitted helminth, a type of worm, infections are common. Here is a map of where it is common. In places where worms are a concern, deworming does happen. 240 million children in India are at risk for it, and we have a national deworming day to combat it. Government healthcare workers, government school employees, etc., administer the necessary medication for it. This is actually really interesting and informative. I never really thought about deworming in humans before. It's fascinating to learn about the different factors that contribute to the need for deworming in different parts of the world. I had no idea that deworming pills are typically only taken on an as-needed basis in developed societies because humans are capable of recognizing and combating parasitic worm infections. It's also really eye-opening to learn about the strategies and efforts in place to reduce parasites in animals in different parts of the world, especially in developing countries. It's crazy to think that in some places, deworming is such a widespread necessity that there are national deworming days and government healthcare workers administer the necessary medication. I wonder what other public health initiatives are in place to combat parasitic worm infections in different parts of the world. And how effective have these efforts been in reducing the prevalence of parasites? Let me know in the comments down below, and let's move right into our next Reddit post. Explain like I'm 5. Rats seem to be the gold standard for behavioral lab experiments. Why? Other than quantity, what makes rats good test subjects in relation to humans? Size, quick gestation period, ease of maintenance, but mainly their physiology is close to ours. When we're thinking about their physiology, does that include neurological similarities as well, or is just being mammalian enough? Thanks for the quick response. I appreciate the insights. Objectively, testing on primates would be better and more accurate to determine the effect a drug would have on humans. The problem is mostly logistics. However, if you want to test, say, 10 different drug mixtures, each with 10 different dose sizes, and you want to have a sample size of 100 individuals, suddenly you need 10,000 individuals. It's far easier to house and maintain 10,000 rats than it is to maintain 10,000 monkeys. The monkeys could write Shakespeare while they wait, though. They're small, don't require a ton of space, they breed quickly, and they're also really smart, trainable, and sociable, which makes some tests much easier to conduct. There's also some PR in play as well. People don't care as much about rodents, so they find it more acceptable to test on them compared to something like a cat or a dog. One of the big factors is that we can reliably clone them, allowing us to remove genetic factors almost entirely from study results. This massively simplifies the design and interpretation of the experiment. This is really interesting. It's amazing to think about how rats are so similar to us in terms of physiology. And the fact that they are small, breed quickly, and are sociable definitely makes them great test subjects. It's also kind of funny how people care less about rodents, so they find it more acceptable to test on them compared to cats or dogs. I never really thought about that before. Plus, the idea of being able to reliably clone them to remove genetic factors from study results is pretty mind-blowing. So when we're thinking about their physiology, does that include neurological similarities as well? Or is just being mammalian enough? Thanks for the quick response. I appreciate the insights. Well, that's another episode of Explain Like I'm 5 in the books. I really appreciate all of you who made it this far into the video. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, it would really help the channel out a lot if you gave the video a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.